What's up, people? So yes, back to it. So like I was saying, I was in the hospital right before being sent home to our very first place in the projects. And before we finally got our own place in the projects and moving there, like I said, I was explaining how I was in the hospital and how sometimes it's a small world. You never know who you'll bump into, and it doesn't matter if you're not home or 45 minutes to an hour and a half away, you never know who you'll see. So, like I said, I was in Shriners and they were telling me that there was somebody that I might know because they lived on the same block as me and they were in a situation where they were injured with a friend. And like I said earlier, when I heard that, I was like, man, that's kind of cool to have somebody here with you, but it would also suck to know that your friend is, injured as well as you are. But at least you're not going through it alone, I guess. So, anyways, I remember when they were telling me that to be on the lookout for a patient that might look familiar because she lived on the same block. I was looking, and then finally a girl rolled in onto the mall or whatever where I saw her. And then when she got her room, it was across from my room, and then she was with another person. So I was like, it has to be this girl. And so I approached her, and it's a small world sometimes because I approached this girl and I asked her if she's from where I'm from, and she is. And sure enough, she lives on the same block as me. I grew up on 139th of Alder Street. 3910 Alder Street was my address to my first house slash apartment. They called it an apartment, but it was a house to me. But anyways, so 3910 Alder Street was where I first lived, and she lived on the same block down on the corner. So I just remember I'm like, no way, and I didn't know her specifically, but she knew my brother. She knew some of my friends. I knew some of her friends, and she for sure lived down the block because I remember when she was explaining to me where she lived, it was I didn't know that there's a bar that was down the street from my house. We always lived by a bar or liquor store, not on purpose, but it just so happened to be that way. And so, anyways, there was a bar on the corner of my house, from my house. I forgot the name. Anyways, so she lived above the bar. And I just remember just thinking to myself, what a small world. And oh my gosh, this woman, like some of the other patients, was just so funny and so goofy. And her friend was too. And I just remember I wanted to hang out with them as much as possible, but I'm a guy. So they didn't really hang out with me as much as I wanted them to. And they were best friends. So understandably, they always wanted to be around each other by themselves. Every once in a while, they would let me come hang out with them. And I'll never forget. We would hang out, we would watch movies together, we would talk about the streets and the people that we knew. And I'll just be looking at them like, wow, what a small world. We grew up on the same block, same neighborhood, and now we're in the same hospital learning how to live with our new life. And it was just fascinating to me, and it's just mind blowing to me how you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know where you're going to meet. And you guys could be from the same area and meet 45 minutes to an hour and a half away from each other. And that was mind blowing. And thank God I still know her. We're not close, but she's still around. She's still a free spirit, so happy, was very positive. And again, it was just mind blowing to see somebody from back home. And before I get into moving into the projects, I think I should tell you guys again how much it hurt me to see people hurt, because before we got released from the hospital to the second time. Um, like I said, so I forgot to tell you guys. So in the very first hospital stay when I was there, and sorry if I'm all over the place sometimes. Um, so the first hospital stay, I'll never forget. I remember they had to see where we were living when I was explaining to you guys. I don't know if I was gonna live with my grandpa, her boyfriend, um, or yeah, we didn't know. And so um, when they were trying to figure out, Shriners was trying to figure out where I was gonna live. They wanted to see both places to see which place would be more that they could make more accessible or which was more easier. And because this girl lived in the same neighborhood, Shriners had offered to send us in a van for an out trip because I'm telling you, this hospital is not a regular hospital, and this hospital used to have like um they used to let us go home on the weekends if you knew how to take care of yourself, or if they knew your family would take care of you and they trusted you, they would let you go home on the weekends. um Not only that, but every day we had activities like I explained that already, and once in a while they would take us places too. And so when they found out that we lived in the same neighborhood, in the same block, they decided to, when we were going to go home to see where we lived, to see if how much accessible we can make it, they had asked if we would go on the same day. And we both agreed. We trusted each other. It's not like I'm going to find out where she lives and send people to her house and vice versa. So um, I just remember when we went to her apartment, when we were sitting outside, it broke my heart because I'm sure, like most people, we all have uncles who are not really our uncles, but they're our uncles. You know what I mean? And I had a lot of deals, and I remember being home for a visit, or when they were trying to figure out where we were gonna live. I'll never forget when we were seeing her place. And I'm a very emotional person, so if you ever see me crying or getting teary eyed, I'm probably am crying, or my eyes are probably teary. Um, you could think I'm soft, sensitive, but if you know where I came from, who I am, far from it. Well, I am sensitive, but I'm not soft. There's a difference to me. If I was walking, I would still be sensitive most likely, but I probably would be. You would know not to call me those things. But anyways, to each their own. Think what you want. I know who I am. God be with me. So I remember sitting out, and they were looking at her apartment and seeing everything that they could do to try to make it more accessible or whatever the situation is. I'll never forget one of my tios, and I had a lot of tios, um, who looked at me like their nephew and took good care of me. Um, my mom had a lot of guys who appreciated her. Not nothing stupid. She didn't sleep with these men. My mom wasn't a saint, but she wasn't sleeping with my uncles. Anyway, so, and some of these guys were my dad's friends, stuff like that. Either they were my mom's friends or my dad's friends or both. And I'll never forget being home for a visit. The one time that broke my heart the most was I had an uncle. This man had a heart of gold. And I was raised around a lot of people with beautiful hearts. My dad, he had a beautiful, amazing heart. My uncle had a beautiful, amazing heart. My grandpa had a beautiful, amazing heart. It's just some of these people didn't show it because they were men and a certain generation and tough and stuff like that. But they had hearts and softies at heart. But anyways, the one time that broke my heart the most is when we were home for that visit. I'll never forget. And this was my first hospital stay. Now that I think about it, I'm sorry that I'm everywhere, but I'm just trying to get all these stories out before I get into the projects. Is my main goal. And like I said, the reason why I'm telling my story is so I can help somebody. If it's just one person, fine. If it's a million people, great. But if I could just help one person before my time or even after my time, if it is after my time, please come to my grave and visit because I'm Muslim. I am Muslim. And if you are Muslim and I touch you, please come pray for me. Come pray that my grave is spacious, please. Anyways, back to it. So I remember being home for the day pass, or being home to see our apartments and how accessible we can make it. And it broke my heart because one of my uncles, he saw me, and when he saw me, he didn't know if I was home from the hospital or what the situation was, because he was driving and I saw him, and my mom saw him, and I said, "Mom, is that Theo so and so?" And my mom was like, "Yeah." And sure enough, this man busted a crazy Yui, parks on the street, jumps out. "Is that my nephew? Is that my nephew?" And my mom goes, "Yes, yes, it's him, it's him." And it broke my heart because he could barely look at me, because he was probably used to me walking and being funny, or who knows what he was used to. And when he saw me, it was hard for him because he just kept his head down, and my mom kept telling him to pick his head up and uh, and to talk to me and to come get me a hug, but it was just too hard for him. And that one broke my heart because that was the first and last time I saw my uncle from my accident. And I'll get into that later on. But like I said, that's why it was another eye opener to be grateful to be in the chair, because when I saw my uncle and how hurt he was and he could barely look at me, I was like, you could do that to people. And that's why I was so grateful to wake up paralyzed, because when I saw my family crying, um, and my dad, he wasn't really in my life that much. He was in and out until my accident. And my mom always said it, my aunt always said it. Don't worry, he's just lost right now. If anything would ever happen, he'll be right there. And sure enough, he was. But like I said, you never know who you're hurting when you're doing this yourself, when you're doing it to people. And these were just eye openers. So saw my uncle that day, saw um the person who lived on the same block, and we went back to the hospital, and it just hurt seeing my uncle like that. And but anyways, so it was just grateful. I was just grateful to meet this patient, because like I said, because of her, we were able to go back home. We were able to see home. They let us, take them on a little tour. So we went around the block. We went a few blocks, and it was amazing. And like I said, when I got to see my uncle, that was such a beautiful feeling. And another thing I forgot to tell you guys, um, another uncle of mine, it's cool how people could make you feel like like you're the man. And I'll never forget when we were at my grandpa's house for a visit for a weekend. My mom bumped into one of my uncles, and he was in a biker gang at the time. And I used to think my mom was in love with motorcycles and people who rode them, and she used to love riding on them and going for rides. And so anybody with a bike, she just was close and cool with. And one of my uncles was a bike rider, and he was in a biker gang. And I'll never forget, he when he found out I was at my grandpa's house for a visit, um, he goes, my mom, I forgot how, but my mom was driving past that same bar that I was telling you about that's on Alder Street from where I live. I was at my grandpa's house, which is like 6 to 8 blocks away. And I forgot what my mom had her to do, but she had to go do something. And she saw my uncle. He was at the bar, and he comes running out. And when he comes running out and he sees my mom, like, "Hey, how's Joey? How's he doing?" And that's when she goes, "Go ask him yourself." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "He's at dad's house. He's at my grandpa. He's at my dad's house." And then that's when the guy goes, "Can me and the guys go see him?" And my mom knows me. She knows. I don't know why I love gangsters and gangster movies, and she didn't know I was in that life yet. But she knew I was always fascinated by these things, and she was okay with it, unfortunately. So, anyways, I remember being at my grandpa's house, and she comes running in, and she goes, "I gotta get him ready. I gotta get him ready." Because if I'm not mistaken, I was in the living room, and so I don't know, I can't remember too much, but I do remember her coming home excited, her getting me ready, her taking me outside and taking me down the stairs, and I'm sitting in front of my grandpa's house, like, what's going on? And all you hear, you could hear it from all the way, because it was so many of them. And I just remember just hearing, and it was very faint. Like it was very, I could barely hear it, but I could hear it. And I'm probably gonna end it here. And I'm so sorry. It's just these stories keep coming to me, and I want to get everything out that I remember before I moved into the projects. Anyways, so being at my grandpa's house, and this was like one of my first visits home. So this is my first hospital stay and one of my first times going to visit. So like I said, my mom was like, "I got a surprise for you. Somebody's about to come surprise you." And I'm trying to think like, who could it be, you know? And so I'm sitting in front, and I don't know if this was after I saw my uncle or before I saw my uncle, and where we were was by my uncle's house. So I was like, I don't think it's him because we could just go next door to see him. And so, like I said, all I keep hearing is this rumbling, like motorcycles, just but very faint. And then that's when it got louder and louder and louder. And that's when my mom pushed me to where I could see. And when I looked down the street, and they bent that left to come down to where I was, all you see is all these bikes just in formation, and all you hear is just the engines just running. And when they pulled up in front, they let my uncle go in front. He wasn't the leader or nothing, but they let him do it because he was coming to see me, so they wanted him to be in the front, I guess. And I just remember he was in front, and all these guys were in back of him. And my grandfather lived at the beginning of the block. So to get to his house, if you're coming from that way, you have to drive all the way down this way. There were so many bikes that when my uncle was in front of my grandpa's house and stopped in front of my grandpa's house, the bikes were all the way down to the corner. And if I'm not mistaken, a little bent over because they didn't have room to turn in. So they were from there all the way there to turn, and they just keep ripping. They just run, run, run. And I just remember feeling like a boss looking at all these people. I don't know if you're familiar with Sons of Anarchy. I didn't see the show until years later. I don't think it came out until years later. But when I saw the TV show Sons of Anarchy, and I seen how they would always ride together and stuff like that, and I would hear their engines, that's exactly what it sounded like. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's what it was like, you know. And anyway, so I'll never forget that day sitting there and him getting off his bike, and him, and just, he was a big guy, and I'm just looking at this guy, and he's like, "Nephew, how are you? I love you, man. I hope you're doing good. I'm so grateful I ran into your mom. You know, she told me that you were here, and I told the guys we got to come say hi." And and that just made me feel like $1,000,000 when this guy came with all his biker friends, and just to come say hi to me, you know. And so, things like that. It's crazy who you meet, the people you see. Oh, my fire alarm's going off. So I'm in it here.
They're about to perform a test.
They're about to
of the
perform a
fire
test.
alarm system.
So yeah, I'm about to end it
This is
here
only
and
the
get
test.
into the rest
You do
tomorrow.
not need to exit the
Thank you
building.
guys. See you tomorrow.
We're
Or
about to
next time I
perform
get
a
on here.
test